Okay, folks, we're going to take a look at the Unit 4 notes, which deals with the muscles. It's going to get us into the muscle anatomy to start off with. What we want to take a look at to begin with is the actual muscle itself, okay? So what we've got here is the muscle itself, and that's going to be surrounded by what's called an epimysium, okay? And the epimysium basically is this sheath-like covering that covers the entire muscle, okay? Now, notice right here we've got all of these fascicles as well, okay? So each fascicle is bound up by that epimysium. That's what's making up your actual muscle itself. And each one of the fascicles is going to be separated by a perimysium. So we've got epimysium on the outside, then we've got a bunch of fascicles. Each fascicle is wrapped up with a perimysium. Now, each of these fascicles is holding together a bunch of individual muscle fibers, which are actual muscle cells, and each one of these muscle fibers is going to be surrounded by an endomysium. Okay, so endo meaning inside, that's going to be the innermost sheath. Okay, so each muscle fiber is surrounded by an endomysium. Each one of the fascicles is surrounded by a perimysium, and then our entire muscle itself is surrounded by an epimysium, okay? So we're going to take a look now at an individual muscle fiber. Remember, this is that smallest one that's surrounded by the endomysium. Now, the endomysium is like a connective tissue covering that's covering just the muscle cell. Well, remember, all of our cells have a specialized plasma membrane. Well, this muscle cell is no different, okay? It's going to have a specialized plasma membrane, and its specialized plasma membrane is actually called a sarcolemma. So the sarcolemma is going to be the plasma membrane. Then around that, you're also going to have the endomysium, which is going to cover that whole thing as well. Also within this, you have what's called a myofibril. A myofibril is a specialized organelle that is just for muscles, okay, and it's called a contractile organelle. So this actually has the ability to contract and then relax back out as well. Here's another view of that. Okay, so you've got the let's see here, the sarcolemma, which is the outermost plasma membrane. Then you've got all of your myofibrils in here as well. You've also got a specialized endoplasmic reticulum that's in this area, which is called our sarcoplasmic reticulum, and we're going to take a look at what that does here in just a few minutes. Okay, I want you to also notice, though, you also have your multinucleuses. Okay, so here's a nucleus here, here's a nucleus here. These myofibrils are going to be considered to be multinucleated cells. So here's a myofibril once again. Notice we've got what's called, let me move that out of the way. Notice we've got what's called thin filaments here, and we've also got thick filaments. Our thin filaments are also called actin, and the actin versus the myosin filaments is going to play a huge role in the actual contraction of a muscle. Sorry about the bell right there. I'm doing this during first period. So once again, you've got the actin filaments within here. You've also got these thicker red myosin filaments, and we're going to take a look at what each one of these does. So here's some definitions for us. We've got the sarcolemma. Don't forget the sarcolemma is that specialized plasma membrane that's going to surround a muscle cell. Okay, now don't get this confused with an endomysium. Okay, the sarcolemma is the cell membrane. Then on the outside of the cell membrane, then you would have the endomysium that's going to surround that. A myofibril is just this contractile organelle. It's actually an organelle, just like a nucleus or a mitochondria or a lysosome, whatever the case may be. This is just a specialized organelle for a muscle itself. Sorry about the bell once again. A sarcomere is a tiny contractile unit that makes up the myofibril, and this is aligned from end to end. Okay, so a sarcomere is basically going to go from. Notice we have this what's called the Z disc here. This is where our actin filaments basically hook up to, and you've got another situation right here that's the same sort of deal. You've got another Z disc. So basically, a sarcomere is going to go from Z disc to Z disc, okay, and within that you've got your actin filaments, you've got your myosin filaments, you've got this little area right here called the H zone, which is where, notice that our actin filaments don't quite go all the way into that area, okay. So you've got the situation that makes these dark and light bands because of that. So notice right here you don't have any myosin filaments, and so therefore that would end up being a lighter band because you're lacking those filaments. This area right in here has the actin and the myosin filaments, so right in here you're going to get a really darkened area because you've got so much protein filament within that area. So that's why this area is going to be considered to be your dark band, and we're going to take a look more deeply at that in a few minutes. But nonetheless, the part to understand right now is that from this Z disc to Z disc, that's known as a sarcomere. Your myofilaments, these are filaments composing the myofibrils. The two types are actin and myosin. Okay, so these little guys right here, these are your myofilaments. The actin and myosin are what's considered to be myofilaments. Okay, and you've got thick myofilaments, which are your myosin, and you've got thin myofilaments, which are your actin. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, remember I said earlier that this is a specialized endoplasmic reticulum. This particular one is going to store up calcium because, as Miss Johnson's going to teach you about in a little while, you have to have calcium in order to release on demand in order for these myofibrils to contract, and that's the whole point of having muscles, is so that they will contract. It says, of course, there are also multiple nuclei and mitochondria scattered throughout the muscle as well. So these are indeed multinucleated cells. And notice all these little mitochondria in here. Okay, there are tons and tons and tons because we need so much energy in our muscles. So therefore, we're going to have a lot of these mitochondria to provide the energy for the muscle to contract. So here's a little summary for us. Let me pull this up real quick. So we've got a muscle, okay, it's not going to let me write. Oh, it might let me write. Nope.